Extra Yarn by Mac Barnett, illustrated by John Clausen. On a cold afternoon in a cold little town, where everywhere you looked was either the white of snow or the black of soot from chimneys, Annabel found a box filled with yarn of every color. So she went home and knit herself a sweater. And when Annabel was done, she had some extra yarn. So she knit a sweater for Mars too. But there was still extra yarn. And when Annabel and Mars went for a walk, Nate pointed and laughed and said, "You look ridiculous." "You're just jealous," said Annabel. "No, I'm not," said Nate. But it turned out he was. And even after she'd made a sweater for Nate and his dog and for herself and for Mars, she still had extra yarn. At school, Annabel's classmates could not stop talking about her sweater. "Quiet," said Mr. Norman. "Quiet, everyone. Annabel, that sweater of yours is a terrible distraction. I cannot teach with everyone turning around to look at you." "Then I'll knit one for everyone," Annabel said, "so they won't have to turn around." "Impossible," said Mr. Norman. "You can't." But it turned out that she could, and she did, even for Mr. Norman. And when she was done, Annabel still had extra yarn. So she knit sweaters for her mom and dad, and for Mr. Pendleton, and Mrs. Pendleton, and Mr. Palmer, and for little Louis. She made sweaters for everyone except Mr. Crabtree, who never wore sweaters or even long pants, and who would stand in his shorts with the snow up to his knees. "No sweater for me, thanks," said Mr. Crabtree. So she made Mr. Crabtree a hat, and even then Annabel had extra yarn. She made sweaters for all the dogs and all the cats, and for the other animals too. Soon people thought, "Soon Annabel will run out of yarn." But it turned out she didn't. So Annabel made sweaters for things that didn't even wear sweaters. Things began to change in that little town. News spread of this remarkable girl who never ran out of yarn, and people came to visit from around the world to see all the sweaters and to shake Annabel's hand. One day, an archduke who was very fond of clothes sailed across the sea and demanded to see Annabel. "Little girl," said the archduke, "I would like to buy that miraculous box of yarn, and I am willing to offer you $1,000,000. "No, thank you," said Annabel, who was knitting a sweater for the pickup truck. The archduke's mustache twitched. "2,000,000, he said. Annabel shook her head. "No, thanks." "10,000,000, shouted the archduke. "Take it or leave it." "Leave it," said Annabel. "I won't sell the yarn." And she didn't. So that night the archduke hired 3 robbers to break into Annabel's house. and they stole the box and took it to the Archduke, who set off across the snow and sailed over the sea. Back to his castle. The Archduke put on his favorite song and sat in his best chair. Then he took out the box, and he lifted his lid, and he looked inside. His mustache quivered. It shivered. It trembled. The Archduke hurled the box out of the window and shouted, "Little girl, I curse you with my family's curse. You will never be happy again." But it turned out she was.